Gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Magaziner. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, gasoline is over $4.50 a gallon. The price of diesel is way up. The price of electricity is way up. The American people can't afford their energy bills. People are having to decide whether to put gas in their cars or food on the table. People can't afford health insurance because their energy costs are so high. And yet you have been blocking dozens of wind and solar energy projects from coming online. Clean energy projects that will expand our energy supply and lower costs for consumers. And what frustrates me about this, Mr. Secretary, is that I know you know better. Please run the video. I think we need the audio.
Because we are blessed with so many sources of energy, including our renewable sources. And so again, as we lead in our all-of-above energy approach, North Dakota has become the 6th leading producer of wind. We're not slowing down. So now there are over 2,000 wind turbines in North Dakota. We know that a number of those blades are manufactured right here in Grand Forks.
We will not allow a windmill to be built in the United States. They're killing us.
So my question is simple. Who is right about wind energy, Governor Burgum or President Trump?
I would just say the thing that I've heard many times today is that this is the lowest source of energy, and that's not true.
Well, let me ask you, were you wrong then as governor? When you were governor, North Dakota became what, number 6 in the country for wind energy?
I would like nothing better than for you to play the entire hour of my speech, which includes.
But let me ask you this again. What percentage of North Dakota's energy, electricity, came from renewables by the time you left office?
It depends
across a full year, on average.
It was a small
35% from wind, another 5% or so from solar, 40% overall. One of the highest in the country.
No.
Yeah,
you're using rated. You're using the rated number, not the actual production.
So
number.
Reclaiming my time, I'll just say again: were you wrong as governor in North Dakota to expand wind energy?
I wasn't wrong because we expanded.
Exactly, and it's not wrong.
because we expanded base load. We did not over-rotate.
Yeah, but as a percentage basis, renewables expanded during your time as governor. And so again, why don't other states around the country deserve the same? We do. In Rhode Island and other states around the country, we deserve access to these wind and solar projects that you are blocking. That's what gets me, is that you know better. When you were governor, to your credit, when you were governor, you did the right thing by the people of North Dakota. You allowed them access to cost-competitive renewable energy, wind in particular and also solar. But now you are blocking major utility-scale projects.
I just want to say, nice try, that you would try to say that somehow you know more about power in North Dakota and the thing.
I know that are you or are you not in North Dakota one of the top 10 or so in the country for renewable energy as a percentage basis, so weighted over a full year?
For rated, but
yes.
when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, they produce nothing.
We have these things called batteries. We've had them since Benjamin Franklin. They come in much bigger sizes than this, and we are expanding battery capacity at roughly double a year. We add the equivalent of 5 or 6 power plants a month worth of battery storage, which makes solar and wind useful not just off-peak but on-peak as well. And so listen,
if you know all this about batteries, could you share with me?
You are blocking projects that would bring down prices. People can't pay their bills right now. People's electric bills are too high, and you are blocking projects, and you know better. Because you know better, I'm going to ask you to help clear up a few things for us. President Trump said, if you have a windmill near your house, the noise causes cancer. True or false, Mr. Secretary? False. The noise does not according to the American Cancer Society, they have not found any evidence that any kind of noise causes cancer, particularly noise from wind energy. China has very, very few wind farms. True or false? The answer is false. China added more wind generation last year than the rest of the world combined. They get 15% of their electricity from wind, which is almost as high as North Dakota. The most expensive form of energy ever, wind and solar, says the president. True or false?
That's true. And
not according to the Department of Energy. Under the Trump administration, the EIA under this administration projects that over the next 5 years, solar 58 per megawatt hour on average, wind $56, combined cycle turbines, including natural gas, $77. So according to the administration's own data, that is not true. Enough of the games. The American people want lower energy costs. They want lower prices.
Okay,
They want these projects not blocked. And the last thing I'll say is this. Chairman Westerman, to his credit, has been working with both sides of the aisle to pass permitting reform, something that we need to do. The number one thing preventing that from happening is the administration playing games, blocking clean energy from getting to the grid. I'll yield back.
I just have a question. Can you explain why that the states that have pursued the policies you're describing have the highest power prices in the country?
Does North Dakota have one of the highest power prices in the country? Because you have one of the highest percentage of renewables.
We weren't pursuing a policy of let's shut down our
40%.
base load and go with renewables.
No one's talking about it. You have 40% renewables.
It's
not the right thing when you were governor. You knew it was the right thing when you were governor. Why isn't it the right thing now?
We're going to move on to the next
False,
question.
false.
The data doesn't lie, Mr. Secretary.
No, the data is a lie. States that have high renewables pay the highest prices.
Does North Dakota pay the highest price?
Iowa. Okay. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Colorado. Mr. Crank, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here today. Just one quick question. Do you know why my colleagues weren't overly upset or concerned when the average price of gas in June of 2022 was $5.01 a gallon? Would it be who was occupying the White House at that time?
I don't know why they weren't concerned. I don't know why. But it's true. It's true that the administration that got the energy prices down the fastest in the shortest amount of time was President Trump during his first months in office.
In 2022, the United States produced, in 2019, we produced 12.3 million barrels of oil a day. In 2022, we produced 11.91, a significant reduction. In 2021, 11.26, almost a million barrels of oil per day less produced. And now today we produce 13.3 million barrels of oil per day. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the energy transition was always a lie. It was energy subtraction, and the idea that you could take base load energy and replace it with renewables without maintaining all of the base load, without adding trillions of dollars of transmission, which are not included in the numbers that were required, that were described there. That's how you end up with higher energy prices for the so-called renewables. Because, and again, it's not. What's the price of what do you pay for the price of an Uber when you don't know if it's going to get you to your location or not? It may not have enough energy to get there. We have to have the key to the energy grid is having power that runs 24 hours a day. And the idea of insisting that somehow we can do intermittent, weather dependent with foreign source materials and not maintain the entire base load. So the economics, when they say it's the cheapest, that's the incremental. It's not the whole cost of the base. We still need the entire base. During the winter storm Fern this year, wind and solar produced 2% of the energy in 22 states. We would have had tens of millions of people without power just 4 months ago in our own country. Wood and trash produce 3% in those states, because in Vermont they still burn wood, and some cities burn trash as part of electrical generation, and we spent hundreds of billions of dollars subsidizing something. You know what saved our bacon during that storm? Coal flexed up 50%. Natural gas flexed up 50%. Nuclear was 11% of the power in those 22 states before, during, and after, because there's no dial to turn it up. It was reliable. It was secure. It was clean. But the idea that somehow that that we can solve this thing by pursuing Germany spent $500 trillion on their green energy, and now they have 20% less electricity at 3 times the cost, and no one will build an AI data center. The folks that want to win this argument are going to end up with win the argument for your state, and you will lose the next CapEx battle, because there's no CapEx is going to go to any place where electricity prices are high and energy prices higher. California has designed a set of policies to have the highest energy prices in the country, and guess what? The only thing they're going to lead in is out-migration.
Yeah, and we all have, some of us have amnesia from 2022 and when prices were well over what they are today. We still need to get gas prices down.
And we'll get them down again. We know how to get them down. You get them down with more supply, less regulation, and lower taxes. We have the formula. The folks that are saying it's unaffordable were the ones that drove these high prices.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, we're blessed with abundant energy and mineral resources, but we can't responsibly develop that if we don't have that fully identified and mapped. Better geological mapping is very important to us. What steps is the Interior taking to support and accelerate these mapping efforts so we can better understand and utilize our domestic resource base?
The new mantra at USGS is going back to the roots. It's map, baby, map. That's what that group was created for. You use federal dollars to do the mapping. You release that information to the public. The private sector follows, and we get ourselves back into get ourselves out of this bind that we're in, being completely out of the critical minerals business. And I mean, just as the USGS just released a map last week that indicates that in Appalachia, the northern Appalachia, we have 300 years worth of lithium, which with 300 years worth of imports, we import it now. And of course, we need that for all these little batteries that everybody's holding up. And the last thing I would say, if folks that want to hold up batteries, I would just ask you, how much power, grid-based power, if we said everything's shut down, we're going to switch to batteries? It's about 12 minutes of battery power for the nation. That's what we have now. So, of course, on a teeny little base, you can double the amount of battery power every year, but it'll take us a century to have a meaningful amount to be able to run the grid when the sun's not shining, which we know that happens every day, and the wind's not blowing. That happens. The Germans actually invented a word called dark doldrums because they have companies missing their earnings calls because the sun didn't shine as much as they thought because they had cloudy days and the wind didn't blow. And I don't think at a time when we were talking about winning the AI arms race where we need more electricity than we've ever needed, we can take electricity, a kilowatt of electricity, and turn it into intelligence. That's even more amazing than turning it into lighter heat. At that time that we want to bet on the weather. And if there's one more comment that's made here about China, the comments that are being made here, go look online. They're being posted by pro-China organizations almost immediately when the speakers are done being speakers. And ranking chairman laughs. It's true. I'm not making that up. They love that when we have all these pro-China things. You know why China's doing all the renewables?
Mr. Secretary,
because
China's thrilled with your energy policy.
Well,
You've handed the future to them.
gentleman-
Don't insult our intelligence.
The gentleman's time is
Just ask the mayor from
China's pursuing all this renewable because they import 11.5 million barrels a day. They're not insulted by our stuff. They wish they had our abundant resources. That's why they were going around the world buying stuff from Iran and Venezuela at a discount. I mean,
ask the mayor from California that was just arrested about China. You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time
Mr.
expired. I
Chairman.
recognize myself to submit for the record a report from the National Center for Energy Analytics titled "The Battery Storage Delusion: Utility-Scale Batteries Are No Silver Bullet," which reports that utility-scale lithium-ion batteries are fundamentally limited as a grid solution. They discharge for only 1 to 4 hours, degrade at 3 to 7% annually, last just 10 to 13 years, and deliver real-world efficiency closer to 70% than advertised. At national scale, the material and energy costs are staggering. Backing up a single winter day would require 1.3 billion tons of raw materials and 850 terawatt hours of input energy repeated every decade. Safety risk from thermal runaway, weak recycling economics for low-value lithium iron phosphate chemistries, and inconsistent global waste regulations that shift environmental harm to lower enforcement jurisdictions further undermine the technology's viability. Treating batteries as a scalable clean energy solution risks misallocating resources, eroding grid reliability, and diverting critical investment away from the firm, dispatchable generating capacity that actually keeps the lights on. And as someone from a congressional district that has one of the world's largest deposits of lithium, I'd love to see more lithium batteries, but we have to improve the technology if we're going to have any kind of grid-level storage. Without objection, so ordered. The chair, Ms. Stansberry.
I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to enter another report into the record. This one is from the International Monetary Fund from December of 2022 that is entitled, "The World Has Gone from Plentiful, Cheap Energy to Scarcity Amid Low Investment and War." And the important part about this report about global oil markets is that what drove oil prices in 2021, which the gentleman just referred to, was war in Ukraine, just as the largest single oil disruption on planet Earth that's happening right now is the illegal war in Iran and the president's choice to go to war in Iran.
Without objection,
And Mr. Chairman, I have unanimous consent.
so ordered on Ms. Stansberry's You're recognized, Mr. Huffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a report on the energy storage market outlook, which states that the U.S. is expected to have over 600 gigawatt hours of total capacity by 2030, about the equivalent of 300 Hoover dams. This battery storage is significant. Its real grid operators know how to use it in conjunction with renewables to keep the lights on.
Without objection, so ordered. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Hernandez. You're recognized for 5 minutes. Oh,
Sorry.
that's what I thought. Sorry. Puerto Rico, you're recognized.
Thank you. I appreciate it, but I don't want to leave. No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Secretary, the Compact of Free Association Amendments Act of 2024 codified the Interagency Group on Freely Associated States to address implementation issues as they arise. Your department co-chairs it alongside the Department of State. As you know, the Freely Associated States continue to serve in the U.S. Armed Forces at disproportionately high rates. Yet many veterans living there still must travel thousands of miles at personal expense to access earned care benefits. VA's explanation for why veterans in the freely associated states still cannot access services like telehealth, mail-order pharmacy, and beneficiary travel benefits has shifted over time. Initially, VA indicated it lacked legal authority to act. More recently, VA has suggested appropriations may be the issue, yet implementation still has not occurred. Given DOI's role coordinating implementation of the Compact amendments, will you commit to engaging with the VA to resolve whatever barriers remain to implementing these veterans' services in the freely associated states?
I'll not only commit to it, I've already spoken to Secretary Collins about this, and we're grateful for the high level of military participation among both our territories and the Compact of Free Associated States. And this health care issue is an issue, and of course, a lot of them got to fly to Hawaii, thousands and thousands of miles away for care, and that's an impact on them and their families. So absolutely, we're working on this.
Do you have a timeline for when you can expect to have a solution for them?
Ultimately, that's going to come out of the VA budget, but I think we're advocating strongly as part of our role in helping to oversee and manage the territories and the COFA states.
I'll take that as we don't have a timeline yet. Moving on. Secretary Burgum, on February 9th, a 265-foot fuel barge ran aground at the entrance to San Juan Harbor and struck the structure of El Morro. It sat on the rocks for over 2 weeks. As you know, the National Park Service manages El Morro both as a National Historic Landmark and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Did NPS assess the structural and environmental damage to El Morro from this incident? And if so, when will you share that assessment with Congress?
Yeah, we'll be happy to share that publicly when that report's completed.
Do you have an estimate for when the report will be completed?
I don't.
Has the report been started?
Is
there a report in progress?
I'm certain there's a report in progress, but I don't know when. I don't know when it'll be finished.
Okay. You know, El Morro has stood for nearly 500 years. It has survived hurricanes, invasions, and centuries of history. It should not be at risk from a barge with a broken tow line. Mr. Secretary, what formal role does NPS play in protecting El Morro from maritime safety risks? And will you commit to working with the Coast Guard to strengthen that role so El Morro can stand for another 500 years?
Yes.
And has NPS estimated the cost of the structural and operational impacts caused by this incident?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question there exactly.
Do you have a cost estimate of the structural and operational impacts that the barge incident caused to the national park?
No, I don't have that today, but I will ask to make sure it's included in the report.
The report that we're not certain if it exists. Frankly, this incident demonstrates...
I'm certain it's underway. I just don't know the timeline and when it would be delivered.
I think good management practices set deadlines. Frankly, this incident demonstrates how vulnerable Puerto Rico remains when energy policy and infrastructure planning fail to adequately account for operational risk. The island already depends heavily on fuel shipments because of the fragility of the grid, but if that dependence is not matched with strong oversight, modern infrastructure, and serious contingency planning, the consequences can extend far beyond the energy sector and threaten cultural, environmental, and economic assets that cannot be replaced. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Montana, Mr. Downing. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here. Mr. Secretary, I want to thank you first for championing American energy dominance in your role as in the Department of Interior, in particular, your support for coal mining. It's invigorated a crucial industry and helped secure jobs in rural communities, including mine in my home district of central and eastern Montana. So first, I'd like to hear your insights on this administration's vision for the future of American coal. Can you explain why the administration believes coal remains a critical component of baseload electricity generation, particularly as we see demand increases from AI data centers and domestic manufacturing growth?
Well, the coal is critical. It's critical as a baseload energy source. It's a reliable 7x24. It doesn't get disrupted by supply chains because most of the power that we're generating is near the mines that produce that coal, as it is in your state and my state. The other thing, of course, is that we now know that in some of these coal that we've got really high concentrations, some of the highest in the country, of critical minerals that we need. The opportunity for co-processing of those critical minerals at the same time we're doing thermal generation is significant. The number one thing we can do to make sure we maintain stability of the grid is stop shutting down reliable baseload. In this last year, the Trump administration, through the 202C authorities that Chris Wright had as Secretary of Energy, and also just utilities realizing that they were putting themselves in a precarious over-rotation towards intermittent, unreliable sources. 17 gigawatts of baseload coal remained open, and that was critical to getting through the peak winter days this winter. So again, the administration is fully supportive and appreciates your support for this industry.
Thank you. And so kind of, moving on from there, can you discuss how the prior administration's restrictions on federal coal leasing affected long-term planning and investment decisions for domestic mining companies?
Well, it was a full-on assault. It started during the Obama administration, and then it accelerated during the Biden administration. But in some cases, there was rules and regulations that were put in place strictly to try to shut down coal. And of course, if there's a coal plant operating in America today, it's clean because it's survived this 20-year onslaught. And it's remarkable how the industry's been able to respond to produce the clean power source that they do.
Thank you. The Trump administration has actively moved to reverse the previous administration's war on coal mining in Montana. And this includes President Trump signing into law my CRA resolution reversing Biden's coal leasing ban on the Powder River Basin, as well as the Department of Interior, under your leadership, implementing emergency permitting measures that have helped sustain mining operations such as the Bull Mountains mine in Muscle County. So, Mr. Secretary, how important is it for Congress to act to codify these efforts to ensure the long-term viability of coal mining in America?
Well, I think it's incredibly important because, as we've discussed here, I mean, we need baseload power. Is absolutely it's imperative that we maintain that baseload power, and it would be imperative that we can move some of these energy discussions away from out of ideology and into having the durability of Congress passing laws to support them.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to move on something that's very important to me: supporting Indian country. I want to thank you for those answers, but. One of the important roles that the Department of Interior has and plays in Indian country supporting our tribes, including the 8 tribes that we have located in Montana's 2nd Congressional District. So first, Mr. Secretary, I appreciated you highlighting in your testimony the importance of the federal government upholding its trust responsibilities to our tribes. Can you elaborate on how President Trump's fiscal year 27 budget for the Department of Interior will support fulfilling those obligations?
The key thing here is driving towards supporting sovereignty, and part of that is making sure that we're creating the right kind of environments for tribes to have to be self-sustaining. And so, again, reviewing programs that are ineffective and laden with overhead versus making sure that we're getting dollars in the place that actually helps the tribes.
Thank you. What steps can be taken both at a congressional level and administrative level to ensure that the Bureau of Indian Affairs serves tribes and fulfills its obligations in a timely and efficient manner?
Well, I think that, the number one area for Congress to focus on is ensuring that we've got appropriate funding and staffing for BIA law enforcement, because again, we're finding that there's cartels and other organized crime are using these as safe havens.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Mr. Secretary, I've run out of time, so on that, Mr. Chair, I yield.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record. Tribal leaders say the Trump administration failed to consult with them on education department changes. And so while we're saying that we're committed to strengthening tribal education, the administration's failed to consult with tribal nations on significant restriction of tribal education. This article also highlights concerns that the BIE does not have the necessary capacity to support the transfer without education department staff.
Without objections, so ordered. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from New Mexico, Ms. Stansberry. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Burgum, I know it's been a long day, but I really do appreciate you being here today. There are few agencies that have a greater impact for New Mexico than the Department of Interior in its management of tribal affairs, public lands, our waters, our natural resources. And, as I was preparing for today's hearing, I was looking back at your confirmation and your bio. And one of the things I was really struck by is your personal story. As I understand it from your statement, when you were sworn in, you were born and raised in a small town called Arthur, raised by a single mom, and you grew up working with your hands. And as somebody who myself grew up in a rural community in New Mexico with a single mom working with my hands, I understand exactly where you come from. And I appreciate that. But I do want to say that is what makes this budget particularly perplexing for me, especially because during your confirmation, you made a commitment to both sides of the aisle that you would prioritize tribal trust and treaty responsibilities and consultation. And our tribal communities are not unlike the communities you and I grew up in. You know this. Now, I have to say, I know you just answered a question about this, but I used to work at OMB in the Interior Branch. I'm very familiar with these budget tables. I actually did BIA and BIE's budget. And though you just said that you're prioritizing tribal self-government, your budget cuts self-governance compacts by $83 million. Your budget makes over $1 billion in cuts to core tribal programs to BIA and BIE. It makes over $744 million cuts to BIA alone. It cuts tribal colleges by $150 million. It reduces school construction in tribal communities by 85%. And when you compare that with the other cuts in the president's budget in HUD and other programs, it eviscerates tribal housing programs, law enforcement, sanitation and water projects, irrigation projects, basic infrastructure, roads, economic development, and it zeroes out basic education and cultural programs. And this is on top of the other budgets that are scattered all across the president's budget that eviscerate the core programs that support low-income communities like the ones we grew up in. On top of that, I'm sure you're aware, or I hope you're aware, that the Department of Interior is not doing well by tribes right now. It isn't. Tribes are not getting phone calls back from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They cannot get appointments with you. You won't see tribes when they come to Washington, D.C. BIA regional offices are not approving contracts. Tribes have been unable to process basic paperwork to protect their tribal lands, to put land into trust, management of drought operations during the worst drought in recorded history. It's bad. This is the worst most tribes have seen it in their lifetime since the self-determination era began in the 1970s. And when I looked at your budget, I actually went back and did my homework. These are the largest single cuts in tribal funding since before the Reagan era. I don't know how you defend that. I also don't know how you can say that you consulted with tribes when your Department of Interior is seeking to open up one of the most sacred tribal landscapes in the state of New Mexico right now without any tribal consultation. which is Chaco Canyon, which is right behind me. Now, in addition to that, I have to say, now I understand how these budgets get made. I know that the White House puts their fingerprint on things, but I don't know how you can sit there and defend $1 billion for a ballroom at the White House, $15 million for a tribal arch, for an arch right in front of Arlington Cemetery, which veterans are actually opposed to, and a $10 billion slush fund for beautification projects in Washington, D.C., when we don't even have teachers in tribal schools right now, when you're seeking to zero out tribal housing money. People are going to be homeless because of your budget if it passes. And you're defending this? That's not okay. That is not okay, and you know it, because you and I grew up in the same kind of place, and we weren't raised to do this. So, Mr. Secretary, there isn't time for me to ask you any questions, but what I hope that I can appeal to you is to do right by tribes and to know that who you actually serve, while you may serve at the pleasure of this guy, the people you actually serve are the people who hold this place to be the most sacred place on planet Earth. And I hope you'll do right by our tribes. Thank you.
Ladies, time's expired. The chair